Sri Lanka is one united nation again and fast on its path to a new future. A future for which a generation of Sri Lankans have paid for dearly, some with the ultimate sacrifice. The Sri Lanka Rupawahini Corporation, being the premier television network in Sri Lanka, considered it our duty to be actively involved in the formulation of that future. Thus, we bring you Checkmate, the stories of some extraordinary people who have gone that extra mile, set out that extra hour to achieve success in very ordinary circumstances, so that you too may be encouraged to aspire for such greatness. Checkmate, a new Sri Lanka, together we can. Hello everyone and welcome to another program of Checkmate. As you know, everyone does not make it on our list to be guests on Checkmate. Our production team takes very great care in selecting our guests. There is a meticulous screening process, and it is those that have surpassed the expectations of others, those who have gone that extra mile, who can actually be role models to future generations of Sri Lankans, that make it on our guest list on Checkmate. And tonight we have a guest who is a personification of all that the Checkmate ethos stands for. She is a professor emeritus. She was a former vice chancellor of the University of Colombo. She has a DLit, a PhD, an MA from England, a BA honors, and her list goes on, and I don't think we can do justice by just reading her CV, so we're going to enter a full conversation with her as we go on. But you must also know this: she has been presented the Order of the Rising Sun by the Emperor of Japan himself. She's a Fulbright Fellow to Princeton in USA, and she's also a Fellow of the Japan Foundation. And I speak of none other than Sri Lanka's very own and our proud product, Professor Kusuma Karunaratne. Ayubowan, Professor. Welcome to Checkmate.
Thank you.
Well, we start our stories, as all stories start, building you with a little bit of your profile. I'm sure most Sri Lankans know you, but since you're our guest tonight at Rupawahini, we'd like to start with a little bit of your background. I know that your early years were not in Colombo. Maybe you'd like to speak a little bit about your school trip.
I come from Matara, and I was brought up in a kind of a traditional family, and I lived in the village actually, and had my primary education in the village school, and then I went to Vijitha Vidyalaya, that's in Dikwella, and had my education up to the university admissions. There was no advanced level at that time. It was HSE, Higher School Certificate.
Yeah, HSC.
HSC. So by doing that, then entered Peradeniya University, and I had a very pleasant life as a child.
I am sure you did. And then you go on to Peradeniya. As you know, the time is limited, so we're going to fast track you now to your undergraduate days, and then you started lecturing. And then a very interesting anecdote. At Peradeniya, you meet your partner in crime, your companion for life, and that's a very interesting meeting. And I hear that when you were met by Professor Karunaratne, who later on became Professor Karunaratne, then also a young teacher at the campus.
Yes, he was a lecturer in the engineering faculty.
Yes. But he had I hear, a very unique system of measuring the future wife on a Millie Helen scale. He had made up his own scale of how to pick his future bride. You want to talk on this Milli-Helen scale.
I think being an engineer, he thought that for everything or for anything there was some kind of measure, and to measure the beauty of a girl,
Yeah.
he thought there is no other way, but he had
Yeah,
his
he
own
has.
way.
This is what he
Yes.
says. You take the height from hips upwards should be 1.6 times the height from the toe to hip. Her mouth should be 1.6 times the width of her nose. Her beauty must be at least 500 millihelens, and that's so. If you have, in his expectation, you have gone beyond 500 millihelens. His scale.
What he thought was you cannot expect a Helen of Troy, so somebody below that he was happy with.
But I'm sure that he's very happy. And you have 2 children.
Yes, we have 2 sons. Both have done their PhD and both are working.
Yeah.
And my
They're both in Sri Lanka.
no, they are both out. And my elder son has 2 little girls,
Yeah.
and I'm a grandmother.
Congratulations. Now, Professor, you entered the University of Peradeniya, that was to lecture in 1960. And why pick lecturing as a career? What was your, I mean, we are going to come later on to what you actually experienced in your
Yes.
career, but why lecturing?
Actually, from my childhood, I was very interested in studies and interested in literature. And I joined Peradeniya University in 1960 and spent 4 years as an undergraduate, and I got first class honors in my final examination. And then within few months, I was asked to come and serve as a temporary lecturer in the department, which I was very pleased with. And then after 3 months, I was made a permanent lecturer. That was in 64.
Yes.
And I spent 2 years in England doing my master's.
Yes. That was at SOAS.
So I was in Essex University for 1 year, and then I was at the latter part I was in London University, School of Oriental and African Studies.
Yes.
And then having
Part
come,
of the University of London.
that's right, yes. Having come back, I
Yes.
came back to Peradeniya, and in 1970 I came to Colombo as a
Yeah.
lecturer, Colombo
Now-
University.
Yeah. You've obviously had an extensive career, and this is something that I'd like to touch on our future segments. But just to, for the sake of our viewers who perhaps may be some future young Sri Lankan ladies in your situation, you seem to have had very interesting life personally as well as academically, but this personal life. You say we had, or your husband says, we had decided to postpone having children until she obtained her PhD. And then you tell this to a friend in London. And then you go and ask your husband, or your friend asks your husband, Sam, can't ladies without PhD degrees give birth to babies?
That-
You want to talk about
That was my husband's friend from Moratorium University.
Yeah.
He was inquiring, aren't you going to have children? Then my husband told him, my wife is doing her PhD, so we have to postpone. Then he said, Sam, she can have a PhD anytime, but to have a child, to have children, there is a age limit or some time. So then
You can't have it all the time.
you can't have it all the time. So then I postponed doing my PhD, and we had 2 children. And
Both were born overseas? Or?
no, here in Sri Lanka.
Right.
Yes,
And then your DLit, the honoris causa.
yes.
Just want to talk a little bit about.
From Colombo University, after I retired, the University of Colombo honored me with a DLit. That's DLit honoris causa,
Yes.
as you said. And then along with that, I was made Professor Emeritus, because when you work as a professor and after retiring, you can't use the title professor
Unless you are emeritus.
unless the university
Confers that.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then this is very interesting. I think you would have been one of the very few ladies, if not the only lady, to receive. There are several first females that you have done, which we'll get to in the next segment. But this Order of the Rising Sun from Japan, you've done extensive work with Japan, which is an area we'd like to talk on. But on particular on this honor from the emperor, you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, actually that was given to me for the service that I had done, that is continued service to strengthen cultural relations between Japan and Sri Lanka. Actually, as a young lecturer, I met 2 Japanese people, 2 Japanese who came to Sri Lanka. One later became a professor, the other one became an ambassador, and then they were my first contacts. They studied, they learned Sinhala from me, and I learned Japanese from them, and I started liking that language, country, and culture. Then also Professor Sarath Chandra and Professor Rajakaruna taught us Japanese literature and culture. So I developed liking, and from that time onwards, for more than 38 years, now about 40 years, I did a lot, in my opinion, to encourage or
Wait,
to strengthen.
Let me just correct you, it's not only your opinion, most of Sri Lanka seems to think
Right.
so.
To strengthen cultural relations between the two countries. And I taught Japanese literature to our students, and while in Japan I gave more than 10 lectures in different universities on Sri Lankan culture, literature, and also about Sri Lankan women. And then we had we started master's degree in Japanese studies program in Colombo University.
Yes.
And in that we were able to get down professors from Japan, and then the relationship, friendship, and cultural attachments went
That
on.
finally led to
Yes, so then in fact this selecting people for this Order of the Rising Sun, that was a very long procedure done for quite some time. In fact, they interviewed my husband also separately.
Really?
Yes, so it was a hard kind of decision, and finally
Professor, you have brought us honor. You have brought us
Thank
honor
you.
in several other fields which we'll discuss. But we have to go to a quick break. But before we do that, we are going to be in the company of Professor Karunaratne for a lot of time to come now. But before we go to a break, I just want to remind everyone about our fan page at the bottom of your screen now. We are on Facebook. We are also on email. As you know, Checkmate has been constantly reviewing our own programming and appreciating your comments and thinking of ways as to how we can make it better for you. So do continue writing into us. We are particularly impressed by our overseas viewers who probably watch us at odd times. Thank you very much for all your comments, and thank you for all of you who are interacting with us on Facebook. Thank you very much. Do keep those comments coming in as to how we may improve. Even people that you may know of or you may think creditable enough to be invited on Checkmate. So we're going to go to a short break now in the company of Professor Karunaratne. We'll be back with you in a jiffy. Hello and welcome back. As you know, we are in the company of Professor Kusuma Karunaratne tonight on Checkmate. Professor, let's talk a little bit about your career now. This is a segment that we speak of your experiences and what you may have overcome if you had to. But let's start by one of your several firsts. You were the first female student to earn a first-class honours degree.
in Sinhala.
In Sinhala.
Yes.
And then you went on to be a first of several others. So you want to just...
Yes, first permanent lecturer in the Department of
Female.
Sinhala. Then I became the first woman, first female head of Department of Sinhala. Then first female who did Sinhala special to hold a post of dean. I was the dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies and acting vice chancellor. There again, the first female who did Sinhala special to hold that position. So it went on like that.
And these probably would have been some of the reasons. The first woman, first female. You were also awarded the Ruhunu Putra Sammana Award.
That's
at one
right,
time.
yes.
But talking of that, your extensive career as a lecturer in university and going into that area. You know, when there's that old saying that if a tap is running, don't fix it. But we have seen constant regimes, not just one, but several regimes trying to tinker with the university system, and obviously everyone is seeing that there is some change that needs to be done. Several people think so. In fact, some people have actually said that there is something that we need to do with the product, a final outcome that we send out to the society. There are several issues here. But in your experience as a lecturer who finally went on to be a vice chancellor, What areas do you think we can change in the present structure?
Actually, university education is not just for students or graduates to go for jobs straight away. And whatever discipline you study in the university, you get that kind of training, leadership, while being in the university. And now the student numbers are very high. So therefore, maybe the opportunities they get is a little less limited. And also a very weak point that we see now is during our time, we went for lectures, and when we didn't have lectures, we were in the library. And we used the library a lot, and we did extra reading. But now the students, they kind of limit their studies to lectures and classroom work. And of course, now in the universities, we have this semester system, whereas during our time, it was end of year examination. So during the year, we had lectures, and at the end of the year the examinations. But now continuous assessment, they have assignments to write, they have classroom presentations. So we expect better results from this, but I'm not sure whether we are getting the amount as we expected.
But surely, now coming back to the point, I remember even not just your days, even our days, we had that end of year exam where some people actually complained that we were used to a parrot-like repetition. We just read and read. But of course, like you said, we went to libraries and read.
Yes.
And we our Vishwa Danuma, we would collect it. But whatever it is, now there is continuous assessment, there is constant studying required of students. So if that is happening, there at the end result, there appears to be a lack of this Vishwa Danuma. So obviously there's something that needs to be done. What's your answer, I mean, from your experience?
I think some students, they complain that they have no time for extra work, extra reading, because all the time they have assignments to write and then other presentations. But I don't think that's an excuse, because students during this period, of course during our time it was only studying, extra sports and other things were necessary, were done. But today I think some students, they need a little money, and some students go for work, part-time work. So that kind of problems are there. But anyway, the basic shortcoming is that they limit their knowledge to what is taught in classroom, which shouldn't happen.
As a former lecturer, now I ask this question because there are several moves now. Or, I mean, any parent who can afford it would love to send their children abroad. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going abroad. You and I have both gone abroad and studied, but at later stage. How do we make our university, even when it comes to our children or children of our generations, how do we make it more attractive for parents to think of our universities as the first choice? There will be several people now, particularly in Colombo and the suburbs, who think, our children shouldn't go to Sri Lankan universities because that's not the place. But how would you react to that? I mean, how do we make our universities more attractive to Sri Lankan children?
Actually, even today, there is no doubt that our standards are fairly high. And our students, having done maybe not the university education, maybe advanced level, and also maybe after doing the first degree, when they go abroad to foreign universities, they do very well. Sometimes they become the first in the batch in class. So our standards are still very high, and I think we should be happy about it. But then now some people expect that the graduates should be able to find jobs soon after they graduate. Finding jobs is not just with the examination results you get. There are other things, other skills that you have to build up during your student career. And some students, they are interested, some are not interested. So that's something that we have to look into.
How do we grapple with this mentality? This is something that some of our previous guests have also commented on. How do we grapple with this mentality of accumulation of certificates on the wall? As opposed to, I mean, I'm not saying that accumulation of certificates is bad. It's nice to have certificates. But when the trend seems to be more what certificate you can frame and hang on the wall rather than what education you can accumulate in yourself, how do we change that trend?
Yeah. I'm reminded of a Japanese writer's novel, Natsume Soseke's Kokoro. In that one, there is a professor who is very kind of not only learned, he thinks very far, right?
Progressive thinker.
Progressive thinking, and his student also follows him, and then he takes his degree certificate home, and the father is so upset that he did not bring it in a sort of good way.
Yeah.
Then for the student, the degree or the certificate is not very important, but for the father it's very important. He can show the neighbors that his son has done a degree and all that.
Yeah.
So getting a degree and collecting certificates is not the main thing. Getting the degree is very, very essential. Basic degree is very essential for everybody.
But acquiring
anybody.
knowledge.
Acquiring knowledge is the most important thing. While doing the degree, you can do so many things, like, you know, as I said, you know, like improving your skills. One thing is English. Now, students today, of course, they are now thinking that it is important. But then sometimes